Hi, this is Teddy, and you're listening to Kat Calvin from Spread the Vote on Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dumbcast Podcast Network.
Are you listening?
Everyone, this is Kelly with Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dumbcast family of podcasts, and I am on today with my friend Kat Calvin. Kat is the founder and executive director of Spread the Vote. Hi, Kat.
Hi, how are you?
I am great. Thanks for joining me from across the country, but at this point you could be across the street and it would be like you were across the country.
Podcasting in the apocalypse.
It's the only thing that still works exactly as it always has.
That's true.
So Kat, I have all sorts of things to ask you about with Spread the Vote, but it's been a while since we did our last episode. I think at this point, like a couple of years. So could you do a sort of a little introduction of yourself and what Spread the Vote is?
Yeah, absolutely. I am the founder of Spread the Vote. We, up until a few days ago, help people get government-issued photo ID in 12 states around the country by helping folks get all of the documents required, helping to pay for everything, helping to find everything you need to go to the DMV to get an ID, and then helping make sure they get it. And then if they're eligible to vote, then we register them to vote and do a lot of voter education and help folks go to the polls for elections.
And how did you come to be doing this? What's your background, and how is this what led you to this particular challenge?
I started Spread the Vote after the 2016 election. I'd run a few orgs before and had stopped for health reasons. And then the election happened, and there was this huge voter ID problem. And there were a lot of great orgs that were seeking sort of judicial and political remedies, which don't have a big effect in most states. And so I thought, well, let's just get folks IDs. So I started Spread the Vote.
So I think a lot of people, when they hear about laws that require IDs to vote, they say, well, everybody has an ID. What's the big deal? Why is that a problem? So what are some of the challenges, even before this particular moment, that people had in being able to obtain a government ID?
Well, over 21 million eligible voters in this country don't have ID. It's about 11% of the country. It's actually more if you look at folks who are not eligible for reasons such as their rights haven't been restored in whatever state they live in. But 21 million is the most recent number based on a study from 2012. And so, when you look at that, that's a huge percentage of people. There are 34 states that require some form of ID to vote. And actually in every state, there is an ID required for voting at some level for some reason. So really, if you want to vote in most states, you have to have ID, but you also need an ID to get a job, to get housing, to seek medical care, which is important right now, for a million different things. And so when you don't have an ID, then that means you, for the most part, probably are not working. And so then having the money, because the IDs are not free, birth certificates are not free, and having the transportation to be able to get to government offices, understanding the bureaucracy, everyone, well, maybe this year we'll see, but up until a few days ago was going to have to figure out real ID this year, and that's really challenging. It's a tough thing to do. All of us have been to the DMV and know what it's like going through that process. And when you are possibly experiencing homelessness, or you're a senior citizen, or you're a returning citizen, or a student, or part of one of the many demographics that we help serve, the challenges to getting an ID can be insurmountable, but you need that ID in order to do any of the things you want to do with your life.
How did you decide which states to focus on? And does it look the same in every state? Is your operation different in different places?
There are a lot of different ways. Like I said, there are 34 states that require ID to vote. There's a desperate need for IDs in all 50 states. So we Look at a lot of things from sort of strictness of ID laws to just where we get a lot of requests to go to sort of where it makes sense for different reasons. We sort of just try to look at each state individually and figure out, okay, this is where it makes sense to expand right now. When it comes to getting an ID at the DMV, the process is actually pretty similar in every state. Different DMVs might ask for different numbers of proofs of residency versus identity or things like that. But everyone has to have a birth certificate, some proofs of this, some proofs of that, etc. And then now with Real ID, there are additional documents, but most DMVs are pretty similar. Getting a birth certificate can be challenging in some states over others. It's almost impossible in New York. Like there are some states that make it very difficult. But that part, we have figured out processes and sort of built tech and databases in order to make the part of getting the DMV ID not easy ever, but it's a little bit more standardized. On the voter ID side, the laws just vary wildly depending on the state. The strictness and what they will and won't accept just really varies depending on which state you're looking at.
So you mentioned that things like medical care and housing also require IDs, and that seems like something that's going to be an increasing challenge in the coming weeks, months with the crisis that we're in. What are the particular issues that you can foresee right now for people who do not have IDs in this moment we're in?
Well, I mean, one of the huge ones is that if you go to a doctor or an ER or even most free clinics to get a checkup, you have to have ID. And so one of the big problems we run into is we have a lot of clients who come to us and they need medical care and they can't get it, or they need, certain prescriptions or things like that, and they can't get them without ID. And so right now, when you are facing a pandemic and we need people when they feel like they have certain symptoms to go to a doctor, we need them to be able to do that without, the burden of not having an ID. So that's a huge problem. If you think about the 21 million people who may have symptoms, coughing, fever, whatever, and can't see a doctor. There's also a huge problem. We have over 500,000 people experiencing homelessness in this country. People experiencing homelessness tend to, they're aging rapidly. Like the population of people experiencing homelessness are aging rapidly in this country. They also are much more likely to have some of the underlying causes that make them much more at high risk. For COVID-19 and other diseases, people experiencing homelessness tend to have 30% higher cases of respiratory diseases than people who don't. So you're looking at a large population that is at much higher risk than the average population, who cannot wash their hands regularly, who cannot practice social distancing, who can't, self-quarantine at home on the couch watching Netflix, who, if they have a place to sleep, it's in a crowded shelter or it's in the streets, so who both are at high risk to get a disease, but also to spread it. I live in Los Angeles, where we, for the last 2 years, have had a typhoid and typhus outbreak because California has the highest population of people experiencing homelessness in the country, highly concentrated in LA and San Francisco. And so our population has exploded so much that we had these huge outbreaks of medieval diseases. But of course, it isn't something that's just contained to, Skid Row. We had, police officers and people working downtown who were getting typhus and typhoid because you have this population that isn't housed. So it's a huge problem. And it is a problem that is exacerbated by the fact that there is really no escape. And so right now, the state of California and LA are trying to do a lot of things. I know a lot of other cities are trying to do things, trying to find places for folks to sleep, trying, to do whatever they can to try to mitigate this. But the fact is, even if we're putting 6,000 people into rec centers around LA, that's still not social distancing, right? And people can still walk in and out at any time. And so this is, I think what we're seeing right now is the exposure of every single hole in the American system, of which there are more than they're not. And one of the big ones is, if we had taken care of our homelessness problem, if we had made sure that everyone had an ID, every other developed country and most undeveloped countries, everyone just gets a national ID, right? Like, this isn't a problem in most countries. If we were taking care of people before this, then not only would we not have this issue now, but it would significantly lower the risk of our pandemic being as bad as it's as it could be given these circumstances.
So I know you've been looking closely at voting laws and how the different states are sort of reacting to this crisis that we're in. What is your hope for what might happen as a result of all of this? We've got sort of the immediate concerns of what goes on right now. But, obviously everything is going to need to change coming out of this crisis. And so what are some of the ways that we could shape a better system of getting people IDs, of getting people voting rights? Like what do you hope comes out of all of this?
Well, I am pretty cynical, and I've lived in America for a long time, so I don't actually think anything is going to change. But I think that it would be great if, one of our very big goals, Spread the Vote's big goal is to put ourselves out of business. We would really love for the federal government, or at least state agencies, to just give an ID to every adult standard like every other country does. And that is a thing that we would very much like to push for until the end of time. There's a huge push right now for vote by mail, and I get that, and it's great, but it's not a panacea, right? Most of our clients don't have mailing addresses. And so that doesn't really help them. And a lot of state studies have shown that people of color have their voter registration and mail-in ballots thrown out at much higher percentages than white voters. And if you look at states like Oregon, which are all mail-in voting, they still only have 68% turnout because education is a huge issue. So vote by mail is not the final answer. It should be part of a comprehensive voting package, but it's not the final answer. And it's not something that would increase, 77% of our clients have never voted before. Vote by mail would not increase that really at all, because the reasons that they don't vote don't have to do with the ballot's not right here in front of me. It's a lot of different issues. So I think that we really have to think through how are we addressing and solving for poverty in this country? Because that's the problem, right? The problem is that we have such a high percentage of people who don't have jobs and don't have homes, or one or not the other, right? 25% of people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles have full or part-time jobs. They just can't afford housing because housing is incredibly expensive here and in most places. So it's going to get so much worse because we now have companies that within days of this happening started laying off and furloughing employees. But we know that a huge percentage of the majority of Americans don't have $400 in case of an emergency. Well, now we're in that emergency, and companies worth billions of dollars are just choosing not to pay their employees. And so we are actually, there are a lot of very smart economists who are coming out with far greater analysis of the economic impact of this pandemic. I mean, we've already seen it. Unemployment applications went up 70,000 last week, and last week was before the mass quarantine, right? So I think that the answer, the thing we have to look at over everything is how do we address poverty in this country? Because if people are not living in poverty, they're more likely to vote. There's actually a direct correlation between your socioeconomic status in this country and your voter turnout. 99% of the 1% vote, and 1 to 5% of the lowest tiers of socioeconomic status vote, right? Like, it is directly proportional. The more money you make, the more likely you are to vote. So if we address that issue, if we address poverty, then all of these other issues start to resolve themselves.
So what are things that we should be doing in the short term? That's, a part of what we should be doing in the long term. And I absolutely agree. We need to be tackling poverty and inequality. But what are things you would like to see us doing in the very near term that may help the clients of Spread the Vote, that may help with things like making sure that that voting rights are protected as much as possible, given the fact that they weren't in a great state to begin with? What would you like to see all of us advocating for right now?
I mean, there are a few really immediate things that can be done. So food banks and shelters are already seeing a decline in donations, understandably, but it's really problematic. And they are asking that people do not stop by and drop off toilet paper and canned food because everyone needs to stay home. but that people make donations so that they can be sure that they're caring for people, the people in their communities, that there's now a huge burden because shelters have had to shut down all volunteer operations. And so now there's very small staffs who are responsible for taking care of more and more people. So paying really close attention to what are the shelters and food banks in your community that you can send, even if you can just send $20. I mean, that's a couple of meals, right? Is going to be really important. I also think it's really important. And I've seen some movement on this on social media, and I hope to see more. I'm taking a Twitter break this year. It is the greatest thing I've ever done in my life. I may never go back, but I love all the people who are still on there. Because one thing that's happening is that people are starting to really shame these multi-billion-dollar companies that are just choosing not to pay their employees. And I think that we have seen how much companies bow to public pressure, and we've seen a lot of corporations come out, like Disney and Microsoft, and say, "Hey, we're paying everyone, including contractors," because they don't want to be on that side of that PR. And it's really important that we look at the, Marriott and it's the $26 billion company and furloughed 10,000 employees like on day one of the crisis, right? And are just choosing not to pay people, and Nordstrom and like all of these companies that could afford to keep their employees paid or at least half pay or something, and they're not. And I think really putting public pressure on them is important. And then one of the really key things is, look at Spread the Vote, Indivisible, all sorts of organizations, I believe Run for Something, are all very quickly trying to find virtual solutions to the work that we've been doing on the ground. And so you can go and volunteer. You can go to spreadthevote.org/volunteer. We're working tirelessly, working on a bunch of different solutions, both to help, train people now and do work now in a variety of ways. And one of the things that Spread the Vote will be doing is we are working on a strategy so that the day we're able to go back on the ground and work, we can really go out in full force to try to make up for all of the work that we're not able to do right now. So look for your favorite political orgs and see what you can do. There are a lot of socially distant ways to get involved anyways. Text banking and phone banking have always been socially distant. You can always do this from home. And then, everyone's trying to come up with different ways. People are going to start doing like online fundraisers and all sorts of different things to be sure that life doesn't stop, because we are still going to have an election on November 3rd. And the House is still going to be up, and the Senate is still going to be up, and all of your local elections are still going to be up. And so it's really important that we keep working on those. But, I think my number one concern is that we really, really, really do not forget the most vulnerable. And we don't forget all of the people who lost their jobs last week, they're losing their jobs this week, are going to lose their jobs. And we have to care for each other, because it's the global economy is about to take a huge hit. Our national economy is about to take a huge hit. And if we don't all try to do whatever we can for our neighbors, for each other, then we're all really going to be in trouble.
Have you been hearing anything about whether there are any locales in the country that are providing support for people to get IDs right now in the midst of social distancing? Is there any movement on that front?
Well, we're the only national organization that gets IDs. And we work with a lot of partners. Most DMVs either have or are shutting down. Most of our states' DMVs have shut down in the last couple of days, and we expect the rest to. The Social Security Administration has shut down all in-person offices. I mean, everything is shutting down, as it should, because we need to flatten the curve. So, we right now are working with partners. There are some things we can do online with online DMV services, which we are doing. But for the most part, there's not a lot that can be done because everybody is shutting everything down. And so there's a lot of strategy. There's a lot of planning. We're trying to make sure we will have the resources and people power and everything else so that when everything opens back up, we can get back to work. But the DMVs, vital records, Social Security offices, they're all shutting down right now.
Is there some of that work that is currently in person? And I don't mean your work. I mean like the work that DMVs and Social Security offices and things do. Do you think any of that has the opportunity, possibly not in the short term, but in a longer term, to work to be more remotely available, virtually available, and more easily available for people who do need IDs, who have challenges getting them?
if DMVs were to reduce the amount of paperwork required to get an ID, which of course we're doing the exact opposite with Real ID and increasing the amount of paperwork, then there might be some options. I mean, I think it's really important to remember that 80% of our clients don't have access to phone or internet, right? So like in-person services are vital because there's a huge percentage of people in this country who don't have computers, they don't have smartphones, they don't have internet or email. We only interact with them in person because there's no other way. So we can't ever move everything to fully remote or fully mail because there's a lot of people in this country who don't have that luxury. I think that, most DMVs have updated a lot of things. So for instance, if you need to renew a license or things like that, you can do them online. But because so much paperwork is required, you do have to show them in person. Social Security Administration has some things you can do by phone. There's a way to get birth certificates online that we do. It's very expensive, but if you don't have an ID, you have to. So there are some methods. I think that there are always ways people can improve, but as long as we're moving towards this trend of requiring more and more paperwork in order to get IDs, then you are going to have to take those stacks of paperwork in person. But until every American has access to internet, smartphone, email, scanner, whatever, then we need things to be in person because moving everything virtually would just hurt our clients more.
Is there anything else that you would like to make sure that we talk about either with the current crisis or in a more long term?
I would like to remind everyone to please stay home. For the love of God, stay home. Flatten the curve, you guys. I think that right now I'm feeling a lot of just real sort of panic over how many people in this country are going to face extraordinarily hard times, both in, what this disease may do, but also economically, socially, et cetera. And, I've been working on a lot of ways to make sure that our staff has plenty to do and are, exercising regularly and watching movies and like keeping social. And we're always putting in tips about, hey, here's how to not feel isolated and, working very hard to be sure that I'm fundraising so I can keep paying my staff every week while we're in the downward turn and making sure that, we are still able to serve our partners the best we can. And I think it's going to be really important for everyone to be sure that you are keeping yourself busy and occupied and interacting with folks. I have some friends and I set up a Nintendo Switch daily online game that we're all playing together. And we got a Skillshare account so that all of our staff could take courses on anything they want and, are sending workout videos. And so for me, my biggest concern right now is how can we help make sure that everyone from our clients to our staff to our community to, anyone we encounter gets through this in the healthiest way possible, in the safest way possible. I'm an introvert, so being alone for long hours is my dream, really. It's like, oh, all the bars are closed? Great, I could stay home. But I have a lot of friends who are extreme extroverts and will live alone, and this is really difficult. And so I'm trying to make sure, am I calling people every day? Am I texting? Are we, listening to podcasts together or whatever? And, I think for now, I just really desperately want everyone to be taking care of themselves and each other so that we can all get through this together, even while we're completely isolated.
Definitely. I am an introvert, but I am stuck at home with 3 other people. So it's an experience. I think we'll all get through this, but that's very good advice that people should stay in touch with each other. They should definitely listen to their favorite podcast. I will definitely advocate for that.
Yes, and there's a Chrome extension called Netflix Party, so you can watch movies with your friends and chat about it while you're watching them. And there's so many things. And also, you're allowed to go hiking or walking or running alone. So everyone go outside. It's important, and that's really all I'm thinking about right now is how can I do whatever I can to help make sure that people get through this okay.
You mentioned fundraising, so please let people know how they can help support Spread the Vote.
Spreadthevote.org/donate. Any amount helps. Our average ID cost is $40, and we are working very hard to make sure that we have the funds that we need so that we can do an enormous push as soon as we can get back on the ground. So anything that you can spare would be amazing. Also, spreadthevote.org/volunteer. If you're bored, hit us up. We are working on lots of ways to have folks volunteer. We're going to do our virtual volunteer summit in June. We're moving that up and trying to come up with lots of ways for folks to be interactive over the next few weeks. So I'm definitely send us an email if you would like to get involved.
And people should follow Spread the Vote on social media as well. I love all the uplifting stories of people getting their IDs, getting to vote for the first time. It's just really fantastic and heartwarming.
Thank you. Yes, we're at Spread the Vote US on all channels. Well, not Snapchat or TikTok, I guess, so not all channels anymore. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
Maybe we will all learn how to use TikTok, and I don't even know what these things are, Snapchat, over the next few weeks and months.
Like learning how to TikTok a few days from now, and I'll be putting up 3 TikToks a day.
Well, Kat, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. It's been great to talk to you, and the work that you're doing, I've told you before, is just amazing. I think I mentioned when you were on previously that I had this idea right after the November 2016 election. I was like, well, if they're not going to change ID laws, we just need to get everyone IDs. And then I just dropped it. And you had the same idea and actually did it. So I am just so grateful for the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you so much. And thanks for making your podcast. People need things to listen to in these hard times.
All right. Well, stay healthy, stay safe, and everybody stay inside.
Thank you for listening to Two Broads Talking Politics, part of the Dimcast Podcast Network. Our theme song is called Are You Listening? Off of the album Elephant Shaped Trees by the band Immunuri, and we're using it with permission of the band. Our logo and other original artwork is by Matthew Weflin and was created for use by this podcast. You can contact us at twobroadstalkingpolitics@gmail.com or on Twitter or Facebook at Two Broads Talk. You can find all of our episodes at twobroadstalkingpolitics.com or anywhere podcasts are found.